This pandemic has caused us all to keep our distance from one another. The governments all over the world have instructed us, out of precaution for ourselves and our loved ones, to physically separate ourselves from other people outside of our immediate household. Because of a virus that we cannot see, a virus that we know is spreading rapidly across the world, and that can potentially harm us physically, one that can unfortunately cause severe sickness and hospitalization, this virus has caused the whole world to think of ways to take all sorts of precautions in order to prevent sickness and even death. In a similar fashion, the Church Fathers speak to us about fleeing sin as we speak of our very precautions with respect to this virus. St. John Climacus in the Ladder of Divine Ascent, in step 3, he tells us, "Run from places of sin as from the plague, for when fruit is not present, we have no frequent desire to eat it." St. John Climacus here tells us to run from the places of sin. Anything that causes us to sin, or any person that causes us to sin, to run from as if from the plague. Just like now, we are taking all the measures necessary to avoid this virus. We are self-isolating, some are wearing masks, we are keeping our distance when grocery shopping, and taking all these measures. In like manner, anything that leads me to sin, I should flee. This is in line with what our Lord Jesus Christ teaches us in Matthew chapter 5. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. This is just like what the Church Fathers are saying here, to run from sin as if from a plague, to cut out any source of sin. Sometimes we think we are above certain sins, and we place ourselves in an environment that may cause us to get infected. And just like this virus, we may initially be in an environment that is not beneficial to us, and we think that we're okay, but we get exposed. And exposure after exposure, we begin to see change in ourselves, change in our behavior, change in our sensitivity to sin over the course of time. And so let us not think ourselves superior to sin, but rather let us flee. Sometimes we may think, okay, I won't get affected by this close, intimate friendship, or this show, or perhaps this foul language that this person is using. If we have an improper friendship, let us take the precaution our Lord tells us to take and pluck it out, or in other words, cut this friendship. If our devices cause us to sin, let us take the precautions our Lord tells us to take and pluck it out, or in other words, maybe cut off this device completely, or at the very least have accountability with respect to how I use this device. And we can think of all the various things that lead us to sin and take the appropriate action. Saint Gregory of Nyssa in the Life of Moses, when speaking about the passions, he says, "Now, having learned what great power for evil the disease of pleasure possesses, we should conduct our lives as far removed from it as possible. Otherwise, the disease may find some opening against us, like fire whose very proximity causes an evil flame. So also it is in our power to remain unaffected by passion as long as we stay far away from the thing that inflames. For the evils of the passions, like a plague, when once they have gained possession of the critical parts, stop only at death." And so let us heed the advice of St. John Climacus and that of St. Gregory of Nyssa. Let us take the same drastic precautions that we are taking with respect to this virus. If we know something may harm us, whether it be an object or a device, or if it's a person or if it's a place, whatever it may be, let us take the precaution and flee sin and minimize our exposure and risk of infection and spiritual death.